Welcome to the 1000 Nights and 1 Night. Now, when it was the 574th night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that the Sheikh Abd al-Samad answered, I saw 10 maidens like horrors of heaven, and they are calling and signing, Come hither to us. And meseemed there was below me a lake of water. So I thought to throw myself down, when behold, I espied my 12 companions lying dead. So I restrained myself and recited somewhat of Allah's book, whereupon he dispelled me from the damsels' witch-like wiles and malicious guiles, and they disappeared. And doubtless this was an enchantment devised by the people of the city to repel any who should seek to gaze upon or to enter the place. And it had succeeded in slaying our companions. Then he walked all along the wall till he came to the 2 towers of brass aforesaid, and saw therein 2 gates of gold without padlocks or visible means of opening. Hereat he paused as long as Allah pleased, and gazed about him a while, till he espied in the middle of one of the gates a horseman of brass, with hand outstretched as if pointing, and in his palm was somewhat written. So he went up to it, and he read these words. O thou who comest to this place, and thou who wouldest enter, turn the pin in my navel 12 times, and the gate will open. Accordingly, he examined the horseman, and finding in his navel a pin of gold, firm set and fast fixed, he turned it 12 times. Upon the horseman revolved like the blinding lightning, and the gate swung open with a noise like thunder. He entered, and found himself in a long passage, which brought him down some steps into a guard-room furnished with goodly wood benches, whereupon sat men dead, over whose heads hung fine shields, and keen blades, and bent bows, and shafts ready notched. Thence he came to the main gate of the city, and finding it secured with iron bars, and curiously wrought locks, and bolts, and chains, and other fastenings of wood and metal, said to himself, Belike the keys are with yonder dead folk. So he turned back to the guard-room, and seeing amongst the dead an old man seated upon a high wooden bench, who seemed the chiefest of them, said in his mind, Who knows but they are with this sheikh? Doubtless he was the warder of the city, and these others were under his hand. So he went up to him, and lifting his gown, behold, the keys were hanging in his girdle, whereat he joyed with exceeding joy, and was like to fly for the gladness. Then he took them, and going up to the portal, undid the padlocks, and drew back the bolts and the bars, whereupon great leaves flew open with a crash, like the pealing thunder, by reason of its greatness and terribleness. At this he cried out, saying, Aloha Akbar! God is most great! And the folk without answered him with the same words, rejoicing and thanking him for his deed. The Emir Musa also was delighted at the Sheikh's safety, and the opening of the city gate, and the troops all pressed forward to enter. But Musa cried out to them, saying, O folk, if we all go in at once, we shall not be safe from some ill chance which may betide us. Let half enter, and the other half tarry without. So he pushed forwards, with half his men bearing their weapons of war, and finding their comrades lying dead, they buried them. And they saw the doorkeepers, and the eunuchs, and the chamberlains, and the officers reclining on couches of silk, and all were corpses. Then they fared on till they came to the chief marketplace, full of lofty buildings, whereof none overpassed the others, and found all its shops open, with the scales hung out, and the brazen vessels ordered, and the caravans full of all manner of goods. And they behold the merchants sitting on the shop-boards dead, with shriveled skin and rotted bones, a warning to those who take warning. And here they saw 4 separate markets, all replete with wealth. Then they left the great bazaar, and went on till they came to the silk market, where they found silk and brocades, offrayed with red, gold, and dappled with white silver, upon all manners of colors, and the owners lying dead upon mats of scented goat's leather, and looking as if they would speak. After which they traversed the market street of pearls and rubies and other jewels, and came to that of the shroffs and the money changers, whom they saw sitting dead upon carpets of raw silk, and dyed stuffs in shops full of gold and silver. Thence they passed to the perfumer's bazaar, where they found the shops filled with drugs of all kinds, and bladders of musk, and ambergris, and nadscent, and camphor, and other perfumes in vessels of ivory and ebony, and collaged wood, and Andalusian copper, the which is equal to the value of gold, and various kinds of rattan and Indian cane. But the shopkeepers all lay dead, nor was there with them aught of any food. And hard by this drug market they came upon a palace imposingly edified and magnificently decorated. So they entered, and found therein banners displayed, and drawn sword blades, and strung bows and bucklers, hanging by chains of gold and silver, and helmets gilded with red gold. In the vestibule stood benches of ivory, plated with glittering gold, and covered with silken stuffs, whereon lay men whose skin had dried up to their bones. The fool had deemed them sleeping, but for lack of food they had perished, and tasted the cup of death. Now, when Emir Musa saw this, he stood, still glorifying Allah the Most High, and hallowing him, and contemplating the beauty of the palace, and the massiveness of its masonry, and fair perfection of its ordinance, for it was builded after the goodliest and stabliest fashions, and most part of its adornment was of green lapis lazuli, and on the inner door, which stood open, were written in characters of gold and ultramarine these couplets: Consider thou, O man, what these places to thee showed, and be upon thy guard ere thou travel the same road. And prepare thee good provision some day may serve thy turn, for each dweller in the house needs must yeed with those who yode. Consider how this people, their palaces adorned and in dust, have been pledged for the seed of acts they sowed. They built, but their building availed them naught, and hoards, nor saved their lives, nor day of destiny foreslowed. How often did they hope for what things were undecreed, and passed upon their tombs before hope the bounty showed. And from high and awful state of all a sudden they were sent to the straitness of the grave, and oh, base is their abode. Then came to them a crier after burial, and cried, What booted thrones or crowns or the gold to you bestowed? Where now are gone the faces hid by curtain and by veil, whose charms were told in proverbs, those beauties all a mode? The tombs aloud reply to the questioners, and cry, Death's canker and decay, those rosy cheeks corrode. Long time they ate and drank, but their joyance had a term, and the eater eke was eaten, and was eaten by the worm. When the emir read this, he wept, till like a swoon away, and Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, when it was the 575th night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that the emir wept till he was like to swoon away, and bade write down the verses, after which he passed on into the inner palace, and came to a vast hall, at each of whose four corners stood a pavilion lofty and spacious, washed with gold and silver, and painted in various colors. In the heart of the hall was a great jetting fountain of alabaster, surmounted by a canopy of brocade, and in each pavilion was a sitting place, and each place had a richly wrought fountain, and tank paved with marble, and streams flowing in channels along the floor, and meeting in a great and grand cistern of many colors of marble. Quoth the emir to the Sheikh Abd al-Samad, Come, let us visit yonder pavilion. So they entered the first, and found it full of gold, and silver, and pearls, and jacinth, and other precious stones and metals, besides chests filled with brocades, red and yellow and white. Then they repaired to the second pavilion, and opening a closet there found it full of arms and armor, such as gilded helmets, and Davidian hauberks, and Hindi swords, and Arabian spears, and Khorassan maces, and other gears of fight and fray. Thence they passed to the third pavilion, wherein they saw closets padlocked, and covered with curtains wrought with all manner of embroidery. They opened one of these, and found it full of weapons, curiously adorned with open work, and with gold and silver damascene and jewels. Then they entered the fourth pavilion, and opening one of the closets there, beheld it in great store of eating and drinking vessels of gold and silver, with platters of crystal, and goblets set with fine pearls, and cups of carnelian, and so forth. So they all fell to taking that which suited their tastes, and each of the soldiers carried off what he could. When they left the pavilions, they saw in the midst of the palace a door of teak wood, marked with ivory and ebony, and plated with glittering gold, over which hung a silken curtain purfled with all manners of embroideries. And on this door were locks of white silver that opened by artifice without a key. The Sheikh Abd al-Samad went valiantly up thereto, and by the aid of his knowledge and the skill opened the locks, whereupon the door admitted them into a corridor paved with marble, and hung with veil-like tapestries, embroidered with figures and all manner of beasts and birds, whose bodies were of red gold and white silver, and their eyes of pearls and rubies, amazing all who looked upon them. Passing onwards, they came to a saloon, builded all of polished marble, inlaid with jewels, which seemed to the beholder as though the floor were flowing water, and whoso walked thereupon slipped. The emir bade the sheikh strew somewhat upon it, that they might walk over it, which being done, they made shift to fare forwards, till they came to a great domed pavilion of stone, gilded with red gold, and crowned with a cupola of alabaster, about which were set latticed windows, carved and jewelled with rods of emerald, beyond the competence of any king. Under this dome was a canopy of brocade, reposing upon pillars of red gold, and wrought with figures of birds, whose feet were of smaragd, and beneath each bird was a network of fresh-hued pearls. The canopy was spread about a jetting fountain of ivory and carnelian, plated with glittering gold, and thereby stood a couch set with pearls and rubies and other jewels, and beside the couch a pillar of gold. On the capital of the column stood a bird fashioned of red rubies, and holding in his bill a pearl, which shone like a star. And on the couch lay a damsel, as she were the lucent sun, eyes never saw a fairer. She wore a tight-fitting body robe of fine pearls, and a crown of red gold on her head, filleted with gems, and on her forehead were two great jewels, whose light was as the light of the sun, and on her breast she wore a jeweled amulet, filled with musk and ambergris, and worth the empire of the Caesars. And around her neck hung a collar of rubies and great pearls, hollowed and filled with odoriferous musk, and it seemed as if she gazed on them to the right and to the left. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, when it was the 576th night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that the damsel seemed to be gazing at the folk to the right and to the left. The Emir Musa marveled at her exceeding beauty, and was confounded at the blackness of her hair and the redness of her cheeks, which made the beholder deem her alive and not dead, and said to her, Peace be with thee, O damsel. But Talib ibn Saul said to him, Allah preserve thee, O Emir. Verily this damsel is dead, and there is no life in her, so how shall she return thy salam? Adding, Indeed, she is but a corpse, embalmed with exceeding art. Her eyes were taken out after her death, and quicksilver set under them, after which they were restored to their sockets. Wherefore thy glisten, and when the air moveth the lashes, she seemeth to wink, and it appeared to the beholder as though she looked at him, for all she is dead. At this the Emir marveled beyond measure, and said, Glory be to God, who subjugated his creatures to the dominion of dead. Now the couch on which the damsel lay had steps, and thereon stood two statues of Andalusian copper, representing slaves, one white and one black. The first held a mace of steel, and the second a sword of watered steel, which dazzled the eyes. And between them, on one of the steps of the couch, lay a gold tablet, whereon was written in characters of white, silver, and following words: In the name of God, the compassionating, the compassionate. Praise be to Allah, the creator of mankind, and he is the Lord of lords, the causer of causes, in the name of all of the never beginning, the everlasting, the ordainer of fate and fortune. O son of Adam, what hath befooled thee in this long esperance? What hath unminded thee of the death day's mischance? Knowest thou not that death calleth for thee, and hasteneth to seize upon the soul of thee? Be ready, therefore, for the way, and provided thee for thy departure from the world, for surely thou shalt leave it without delay. Where is Adam, first of humanity? Where is Noah with his progeny? Where be the kings of Hind and Iraq plain, and they who over earth's widest regions reign? Where did the Amalekites abide, and giants and tyrants of olden hide? Indeed, the dwelling places are void of them, and they have departed from kindred and home. Where be the kings of Arab and Asiam? They are dead, all of them, and gone, and become rotten bones. Where be the lords so high instead? They are all dead. Where are Korah and Haman? Where is Shaddad, son of Ad? Where be Canaan and Zulat, lord of the stakes? By Allah, the reaper of lives hath reaped them and made void the lands of them. Did they provide them against the day of resurrection, or make ready to answer the Lord of men? O thou, if thou know me not, I will acquaint thee with my name. I am Tadmorah, daughter of the kings of the Amalekites, of those who held dominion over the lands in equity and brought low the necks of humanity. I possessed that which never king possessed, and was righteous in my rule, and did justice among my lieges. Yea, I gave gifts and largesse, and freed bondsmen and bondswomen. Thus lived I many years in all ease and delight of life, till death knocked at my door, and to me and to my folk befell calamities galore. And it was on this wise. There betided us 7 successive years of drought, when no drop of rain fell on us from the skies, and no green thing sprouted for us on the face of the earth. So we ate what was of us of the victuals. Then we fell upon the castle, and devoured them until nothing was left. Thereupon I let bring my treasures, and meted them with measures, and set out trusty men to buy food. They circuited all the lands in quest thereof, and left no city unsought, but found it not to be bought, and returned to us with treasure after a long absence, and gave us to know that they could not succeed in bartering fine pearls for poor wheat, bushel for bushel, weight for weight. So when we despaired of succor, we displayed all our riches and things of price, and shutting the gates of the city and its strong places, resigned ourselves to the dam of our Lord, and committed our case to our king. Then we all died, as thou seest us, and left what we had builded and all we had hoarded. This then is our story. And after the substance not abided but the trace, then they looked at the foot of the tablet, and read these couplets. O child of Adam, let not hope make mock and flight at thee. From all thy hands have treasured removed thou shalt be. I see thou covetest the world and fleeting worldly charms, and races past and gone have done the same as thou I see. Lawful and lawless wealth they got, but all they hoarded astore. Their term accomplished not, delayed of destiny's decree. Armies they led, and puissant men, and gained them gold galore, then left their wealth and palaces by fate compelled to flee to straightness of the graveyard and humble bed of dust, whence pledged for every word and deed they never more free. As a company of travellers had loaded in the night, at house that lacketh food, nor is offrain of company, whose owner saith, O folk, there be no lodging here for you. So packed they who had erst unpacked, and fared hurriedly, misliking much of the march, nor the journey had the halt, had aught of pleasant chances, or had aught of goodly gree. Then prepare thou good provisions for tomorrow's journey stored. Naught but righteous, honest life shall avail thee with the Lord. And the Emir Musa wept as he read, By Allah, the fear of the Lord is the best of all property, the pillar of certainty, and the sole sure stay. Verily, death is the truth manifest, and the sure behest, and therein, O thou, is the goal, and return place evident. Take warning, therefore, by those who to the dust did wend, and hasten on the way of the predestined end. Seest thou that the hoary hairs summon thee to the tomb, and that the whiteness of thy locks maketh moan of thy doom? Wherefore be thou, O awake, ready for thy departure, and thine account to make. O son of Adam, what hath hardened thy heart in mode abhorred? What hath seduced thee from the service of thy Lord? Where be the peoples of old? They are a warning to whoso will be warned. Where be the kings of all sin, and the lords of majestic mien? Where is Shaddad bin Ad, and whatso he built and he established? Where is Nimrod, who revolted against Allah and defied him? Where is Pharaoh, who rebelled against God and denied him? Death followed hard upon the trail of them all, and laid them low, sparing neither great nor small, male nor female, and the reaper of mankind cut them off. Yea, he whom maketh night to return upon day. Know, O thou who comest to this place, that she whom thou seest here was not deluded by the world and its frail delights, for it is faithless, perfidious, a house of ruin, vain and treacherous, and salutary to the creature is the remembrance of his sins. Wherefore she feared her Lord, and made fair her dealings, and provided herself with provaunt against the appointed marching day. Whoso cometh to our city, and Allah vouchsafe him competence to enter it, let him take of the treasure all he can, but touch not that is on my body, for it is the covering of my shame, and the outfit for the last journey. Wherefore let him fear Allah, and despoil not thereof, else will he destroy his own self. This have I set forth to him for a warning from me, and a solemn trust to be, wherewith peace be with you, and I pray Allah to keep you from sickness and calamity. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. And so do I cease my telling of these tales for today, till it be morrow.